Imagine this. The lights dim, the crowd roars, the octagon stands ready, and walking towards it, not Conor McGregor, not Khabib Nurmagomedov, not John Jones, but Bruce Lee, the Dragon. Shirtless, 135 pounds of raw energy, bouncing with that cat-like movement that made him untouchable in his era. The question is simple but electrifying. What if Bruce Lee actually fought in the UFC? Would he dominate the modern lightweight division? Or would the evolution of MMA expose the weaknesses of the world's most famous martial artist? This is not just a fantasy matchup. This is a scientific exploration of Bruce Lee's body, his philosophy, and how he might perform if he was dropped straight into today's UFC octagon. Because here's the thing. Bruce Lee wasn't just an actor. He wasn't just a martial arts teacher. He was a pioneer, a thinker. The man many people called the godfather of MMA. He was mixing, striking, grappling, philosophy, and functional training decades before MMA even had a name. But could his genius actually hold up against modern champions who train with advanced science, specialized coaches, and decades of accumulated fight data? That's what we're about to find out. Asterisk, before we imagine Bruce Lee in a UFC cage fight, we need to understand the time gap. The UFC started in 1993. By that time, Bruce Lee had been gone for 20 years. In his era, the 1960s and 70s, martial arts were fragmented. Karate here, kung fu there, boxing separate, wrestling somewhere else. Everyone stayed in their lanes. Bruce Lee shattered that model. He said, absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. That's exactly what MMA fighters do today. They don't stick to one art. They take the best from all of them. Striking from Muay Thai, submissions from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling takedowns, boxing footwork, and blend it all together. So, in many ways, Bruce Lee's philosophy is MMA. He predicted it. He fathered it. But prediction is one thing. Stepping into the cage against killers like Khabib, Shackles, Oliveira, or Islam Makhachev is another story. So the question isn't whether Bruce Lee influenced MMA. We know he did. The question is, if Bruce Lee in his physical prime fought under UFC rules, how would he actually perform? Asterisk to answer this. Let's break down Bruce Lee, the athlete. Because before we compare him to UFC fighters, we need to know exactly what he was working with. Speed. Bruce Lee's speed was legendary. He could punch in 0.05 seconds faster than the human eye could follow. There are verified stories of him snatching coins from people's hands before they could close their fists. In striking exchanges, speed is king. And in the UFC, that means he could land shots before opponents even saw them coming. Strength to weight ratio, Bruce weighed around 135 pounds. But his muscle density was off the charts. He could do one-arm pull-ups, two-finger push-ups, and dragon flags. His explosive power allowed him to launch kicks that looked superhuman. This matters in the UFC because his frame would fit in the lightweight or featherweight divisions, where speed and agility dominate. Cardio and conditioning, Bruce ran daily. He cycled. He skipped rope. He did isometrics, weightlifting. His VO2 max oxygen efficiency wasn't officially measured, but experts estimate it was elite. Cardio wins fights, and Bruce had gas for days. Adaptability, perhaps Bruce's greatest gift, wasn't physical, it was mental. He wasn't married to tradition. If he saw a weakness, he adjusted. If he saw a better method, he stole it. This ability to evolve mid-fight is what separates good fighters from legends. So, on paper, Bruce Lee has the qualities of a UFC athlete, but the UFC isn't just about striking. And here's where things get tricky. Asterisk, if Bruce Lee walked into the octagon exactly as he was in the 1970s, he'd face a brutal reality. Modern MMA is specialized. Fighters spend years training wrestling defense, Brazilian jiu-jitsu transitions, cage control. Bruce Lee's known skill set included Wing Chun trapping and hand-speed boxing-style footwork, kicking techniques from fencing, Kung Fu and karate, some grappling knowledge from judo and wrestling exposure, but would that be enough against an opponent like Khabib, who could take him down, pin him, and maul him for 3 rounds straight? Probably not. The ground game would be Bruce Lee's biggest weakness. Imagine Bruce Lee versus Sharkleys Oliveira. On the feet, Bruce might land shots, but one takedown, and he's in a submission master's world. Asterisk, Bruce Lee wasn't just any martial artist. He was an obsessive learner. Give him 6 months with modern MMA coaches, a jiu-jitsu black belt, a wrestling Olympian, a Muay Thai trainer, and suddenly, everything changes, because remember, Bruce Lee created Jeet Kune, do not as a fixed style, but as a system of evolution. He wanted to always be ahead of his opponents. If you gave him access to today's fight camps, supplements, recovery science, and training partners, he wouldn't just survive in the UFC, he might thrive. This brings us to the heart of the debate. Do we imagine Bruce Lee teleported straight from 1973 into the UFC cage? Or do we imagine Bruce Lee reborn into today's training environment, molded by the same system as today's fighters? Both scenarios give us very different answers. Now let's talk about something no stats can measure. Bruce Lee's psychology in the cage. Mindset decides fights. Fear, confidence, composure, they're often the difference between victory and defeat. And Bruce Lee's mind was built differently. He wasn't just confident. He had a philosophy that made him untouchable. Be water, my friend. That meant total adaptability. Flow around obstacles. Crash when needed. Stay calm when under pressure. If he brought that into the octagon, his mental edge could rattle opponents. Because fighting Bruce Lee wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare. So now we've laid the foundation. Bruce Lee's body, his strengths, his weaknesses, and the UFC environment. But what happens when we actually put him against today's champions? Could Bruce Lee outstrike McGregor? Could he survive Khabib's ground game? Would his philosophy of adaptability allow him to overcome Oliveira's submissions or Islam Makhachev's wrestling? In the next section, we're going to break down fantasy matchups, Bruce Lee versus specific UFC legends, and analyze how those fights might go, second by second. Because imagining Bruce Lee in the UFC isn't just fun, it's a test of how martial arts has evolved, and how far ahead of his time the dragon really was. So buckle up. The real fight simulation begins now. If there's one fighter who would make the perfect striking matchup for Bruce Lee, it's Conor McGregor. Both men rely on precision, timing, and speed. Both are lighter-weight fighters. Both love the art of distance control. Imagine it, the bell rings. Conor stands in his wide karate stance, bouncing, left hand cocked. Bruce Lee circles, his lead hand extended in the Wing Chun-inspired intercepting fist. Conor throws his famous left straight, but Bruce is faster. He slips outside, countering with a lightning-quick sidekick to Conor's midsection. The crowd gasps. It's the infamous stop hit, Bruce's signature move. Now, Conor's power is undeniable. If he lands clean, Bruce could go down. Conor knocked out Jose Aldo in Shusen seconds. His timing is deadly, but Bruce's speed and unpredictability might neutralize that left hand. Remember, Bruce wasn't a traditional striker. He used oblique kicks, side kicks, finger jabs, tools Conor rarely sees in modern MMA. Who wins? If the fight stays on the feet, Bruce Lee might outmaneuver McGregor. His cardio, adaptability, and speed could frustrate Conor after a round. But if Conor lands early, Bruce might feel the Irishman's knockout power. Now, let's move to the nightmare matchup. Khabib, the Eagle, Nurmagomedov. 29-0, never defeated. The most dominant wrestler in MMA history. Picture this. Bruce Lee darts into the cage. Fast, sharp, landing kicks to Khabib's legs and body. Khabib, unfazed, marches forward with that relentless pressure. Bruce circles, but the cage closes in, and then the take. Khabib shoots, grabs a single leg, and Bruce hits the ground. Now the dragon is in unfamiliar territory. This is the problem. Bruce's era didn't have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as mainstream knowledge. His grappling exposure was limited compared to today's specialists. Khabib, on the other hand, has spent his entire life mauling fighters on the ground. Even UFC legends like Conor and Poirier couldn't escape his smothering top control. Bruce might resist. His strength, his wiry frame, his flexibility could help him scramble. But Khabib's game isn't just about strength. It's about relentless pressure. Minute after minute, Charles Oliveira holds the record for most submissions in UFC history. His game is slick, unpredictable, and dangerous. Here's how it might go. Bruce dances in landing crisp shots. His speed overwhelms Charles early, forcing him to cover up. But Oliveira doesn't panic. He dives for a clinch, pulls guard, and suddenly Bruce is on the mat. Now Bruce is in a world of danger. Oliveira transitions to an armbar, then a triangle choke, then back to an omoplata. He is like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. But Bruce has one advantage: his discipline. He studied joint locks, leverage, and judo throws. While not at a black belt level, his awareness might keep him from falling into easy traps. Still, Charles thrives in chaos. Unless Bruce trained modern submission defense, Oliveira could find a way to tap him out. Now let's put Bruce Lee against Islam Makhachev, the current UFC lightweight champion and arguably the perfect modern fighter. Islam has Khabib's wrestling, Oliveira's grappling awareness, and solid striking. This fight is the ultimate test. Bruce Lee represents the philosophical birth of MMA. Islam Makhachev represents the refined product of MMA's evolution. If Bruce lands his kicks and jabs, he could keep Islam at bay. But Islam has patience. He cuts the cage, times his shots, and eventually takes Bruce down. Unlike Khabib, Islam is also comfortable exchanging on the feet. He wouldn't panic if Bruce landed clean. In a raw matchup, Islam probably wins. But give Bruce a year in modern training camps. Suddenly, it's an even fight. Let's also imagine Bruce fighting in featherweight 145 pounds. Max Holloway, volume striker, throws hundreds of punches per fight. Bruce might struggle with the sheer output, but his speed could counter Max's lack of knockout power. Alexander Volkanovski, toughest pound-for-pound fighter, mixes striking with wrestling. Volk's resilience and cardio might match. Bruce is making this a war of attrition. Here's the truth: in pure as is matchups, Bruce Lee might struggle against elite wrestlers and grapplers. But that's not the full picture. Bruce's genius was his ability to adapt. Imagine Bruce living in the 2020s, training in modern gyms, sparring against world-class grapplers, using data-driven strength and conditioning, cutting weight scientifically in that world. Bruce wouldn't just survive in the UFC, he might redefine it all over again. Because Bruce Lee didn't just copy techniques. He invented, adjusted, and innovated. He would learn takedown defense. He would sharpen submissions. He would use his mind to evolve faster than his opponents. That's why Joe Rogan once said, Bruce Lee would be a legit lightweight in today's UFC. With his speed, discipline, and creativity, he'd be a monster. What do you think? If Bruce Lee fought Conor McGregor in his prime, who wins? Does the Dragon's speed beat Conor's knockout left hand? Or does Conor's precision shut down Bruce's attacks? And more importantly, do you think Bruce Lee could survive the ground game of Khabib or Oliveira? Or would his adaptability allow him to learn enough to compete at the highest level? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just a fantasy. It's a debate about martial arts history, evolution, and one man's timeless impact. So we've looked at Bruce Lee against UFC champions. Some matchups favor him, some expose weaknesses. But there's still one bigger question. What if Bruce Lee didn't just fight in the UFC? What if he trained for it? In the next section, we'll explore Bruce Lee's training philosophy compared to modern fight science, how his routines stack up against today's athletes, and whether his body could handle the brutal pace of UFC combat, because the ultimate answer isn't about who Bruce could beat. It's about whether he could evolve into the greatest MMA fighter of all time. Stay tuned. The Dragon's transformation into a UFC fighter begins now.